Do you see it now? We use this one enchanted night to perform the greatest feat of magic there is. We become ourselves. Halloween is the true magic. It is the night we discover who we really are.
Hello all, and welcome to another episode of Hangar 412, where we conduct research into vehicles from across the multiverse. And today we'll be researching Estovakia's dual magnum-wielding vampire, the CFA-44 Nosferatu. So grab some Estovakian chocolate and a little hot rum, and enjoy the briefing. The CFA-44 is a stealth 6th generation multi-role fighter developed by the Estovakian Albastru Electrice Design Bureau in the early 2000s. The Nosferatu program was started in 2005 to meet the Estovakian military's need for a next-generation carrier-capable attack aircraft as part of a larger arms buildup that would later become what's known as the Aerial Fleet Initiative, after the Eastern faction inherited the project at the outbreak of the Estovakian Civil War. This massive arms buildup was originally conceived by Supreme Commander Gustav Dvornyk after the outbreak of the Civil War in order to end the war, build back better, and make Estovakia great again. This Aerial Fleet Initiative, as it would be known, would be, as it says on the tin, to build up an absolutely massive fleet of airborne battleships, an airborne cruise missile carrier, and several next-generation fighters with all-new experimental weaponry to act as escorts. To put the goal concisely, it was essentially to have recursive layers of defense to protect the heavy command cruiser. By April of 2012, however, the project was at a standstill due to technical and financial setbacks. And in fact, it was these very financial setbacks that gave the craft its legendary name, as many in the military and in the press alike saw this craft as sucking the very financial lifeblood out of the nation's already struggling economy. Just as I mentioned in a previous video how the term Project Shadow in the Sonic universe was originally coined as a derogatory term before Dr. Gerald Robotnik adopted it as the official title for his program, and how in our universe the term Big Bang was also coined as a derogatory term before being adopted by science as well. So the term Nosferatu das Vampir was thrown around as a derogatory term towards the CFA-44 project. The engineers behind the project liked the sound of it and adopted it as the official name of the CFA-44. Though leaning into the name doesn't change the underlying reality that the CFA-44 and Aerial Fleet Initiative programs were a massive drain on the already strained Estovakian economy. This led many to suggest scrapping the program entirely in favor of a cheaper alternative. One such suggestion was to trade the sky for the sea by purchasing and modifying a Super Synfaxi-class submarine from their allies in the Yuktobanian Navy. However, by December of 2012, the Aerial Fleet Initiative and Nosferatu program were back on track. The Estovakian Civil War was brought to a close when the first ship and flagship of the newly christened aerial fleet, known as the P-112 Agaion, was deployed alongside her escorts, CFA-44 Nosferatus, carrying new experimental all-direction multi-purpose Inferno missiles against rival factions vying for power within the country. With the Civil War over, and the Nosferatu and Aerial Fleet Initiative programs proceeding more or less as planned, the Estovakian military government had no need for the Super Synfaxi-class submarine, and it was later purchased by General Resource Limited, a familiar name to fans of this channel. The CFA-44 would eventually serve alongside the Agaion once again, along with the rest of the newly completed aerial fleet during the Ameria-Estovakia War from 2015 to 2016. In fact, the craft's most famous deployment would be during the end of this war. Isla Pasternak would be assigned to fly the Nosferatu to lead Strigan Team, or the Vampiric Squadron, in an effort to recapture Grace Maria from invading Amerian forces. However, Strigan Team wouldn't arrive to the operation area until just after the invading Amerian forces had already recaptured the radio station, Capitol building, the harbor, and their Air Force base from the occupying Estovakian forces. Although likely due to ego, Isla Pasternak ordered the rest of Strigan Team to return to base, forcing him to take on the Garuda Team, i.e. Garuda 1 Talisman and Garuda 2 Shamrock, all alone, only with the aid of his collaborative combat aircraft, otherwise known as UAV-45 Malbolge drones. Even with the help of over 100 collaborative combat aircraft, and the latest technology that the Estovakian military could provide, Isla Pasternak was shot down in his CFA-44 over the Bay of Grace Maria, where the craft was likely recovered and studied by the American military. After the war, records for the aircraft's operation become less frequent. One of these such rare appearances was at Red Mill Air Force Base for an airshow of over 120 military aircraft from air forces from all over the world, commemorating the end of the Balkan War. The Estovakian Air Force took the liberty of repainting this particular craft that was at the airshow to match the most famous model that was flown by Isla Pasternak and shot down at the end of the Amerian-Estovakian War in 2016, as I previously stated. Now that's all the history we have on the aircraft, but now we move on to its more technical aspects. The CFA-44 features a very unique kite-like design that measures in with a length of 24.04 meters or 78.87 feet, and a height of 5.03 meters or 16.5 feet, a wingspan of 14.58 meters or 47.83 feet, and a weight of 18,500 kilograms or 18.5 metric tons or 40,800 pounds or 20.4 US tons. The CFA-44 Nosferatu is powered by two Marte Type 11 engines, giving the craft a top speed of Mach 2.2 or 2,695 kilometers an hour or 1,675 miles per hour or 1,455 knots, and giving it a combat radius of 1,360 kilometers or 850 miles. Though, as for the top speeds, that's what the lore says. But since we have both a CFA-44 and its prototype here at the hangar, we thought we would do some test flights and see for sure. So we decided to conduct a series of high-speed test flights over the desert. At around 1:30 p.m. and the temperatures were around 61 degrees Fahrenheit or 16 degrees Celsius, the humidity was roughly 23%, and the atmospheric pressure at ground level was recorded at roughly 1.78 standard atmospheres. The goal of the experiment was to record the top speeds at various altitudes between 5,000 and 40,000 feet, increasing our altitude 5,000 feet at a time. During our test flights, we found that the production model, and this is important, the production model of the CFA-44 had a consistent top speed of roughly 1,252 knots, or 2,316.85 kilometers an hour, or 1,439.62 miles an hour at altitudes between 5,000 and 15,000 feet. Though we noticed once we hit 20,000 feet, and from that point afterwards, at every 5,000 foot increment, we would gain a slight increase in performance. For example, we noticed that once we got to 20,000 feet, we got nearly 18 extra knots of top speed, going from 1,252 knots to 1,270 knots. And we noticed a similar pattern again once we increased our altitude to 25,000 feet, where we gained another 24 knots of extra speed, giving us a top speed of 1,294 knots this time. And it was after this point we observed an interesting phenomenon. Every time we increased our altitude by 5,000 feet, we would gain that exact 24 extra knots to our top speed. However, we observed that once we increased our altitude by 5,000 feet once more to 40,000 feet, the CFA-44 ceiling altitude, we lost 39 knots of top speed, reducing our top speed to 1,303 knots. And to throw an extra twist in the story, we observed that the aircraft had peak performance at an altitude of 38.5 thousand feet, giving us a top speed of 1,359 knots. This is still 96 knots slower than what was recorded by Estovakian scientists. Though the Estovakians being authoritarian fascist Marxists, it wouldn't surprise me if they fudged the numbers a little bit to make themselves seem a bit more powerful than they actually were. And now on to the prototype of the CFA-44. We decided to conduct these flight tests specifically because we know for a fact that the prototype of the CFA-44 didn't have the performance characteristics that its later production model, the full CFA-44, would. So we repeated the process and conducted these series of flight tests under the exact same conditions as the production variant. So we took the same stepladder approach, starting at 5,000 feet and increasing our altitude by just that much, 5,000 feet, all the way to the CFA-44 ceiling altitude of 40,000 feet. To start, we noticed that just like with the production model, the prototype would keep a consistent top speed at the altitudes between 5,000 and 15,000 feet. Though, as expected, the prototype's top speed was significantly slower than its production model at 954 knots or 1,766.81 kilometers an hour or 1,097.84 miles per hour at altitudes between 5,000 and 15,000 feet. And similar to her successor, the production variant, we also noticed a slight increase to our top speed of roughly 16 knots, giving us a maximum speed of 970 knots when we increased our altitude from 15,000 feet to 20,000 feet. And here we noticed again a similar pattern emerging to what we observed with the CFA-44, where every time we increased our altitude by 5,000 feet, we would gain roughly 19 to 20 extra knots of top speed. And we observed a very similar pattern to what we saw with the CFA-44, where this trend would continue of gaining roughly 19 to 20 extra knots of airspeed up until the ceiling altitude of about 40,000 feet, where we would see a significant drop in performance of about 57 knots. And yet another similarity we observed with her sister craft, the CFA-44, the prototype also would achieve peak performance at roughly 38.5 thousand feet with a top speed of roughly 1,043 knots. Some other performance differences we noticed is that the prototype is made to be slightly more stable than the final production model, as the prototype was designed to be more of a gunfighter in philosophy, as it was built around the primary use of its electromagnetic launcher to be sort of a flying sniper rifle, as opposed to her successor, which was built around the Inferno missiles and dogfighting, where it would need to be less stable to allow for quicker maneuverability. Actually, funny story, right as we were pulling the prototype back into the hangar, it occurred to us that just to be thorough, we should probably pull out our 2019 model and take that on the exact same series of high-speed test flights. So after removing all of the upgrades from our model of the CFA-44, leaving it completely stock, we pulled it out of the hangar and began the same routine as before, seeing how fast we could go at 5,000 feet, increasing our altitude by just that much, 5,000 feet, all the way up to what we were expecting to be 40,000 feet, I'll get to that in a minute, and seeing what high speeds we could achieve along the way. And we observed the same pattern as we did before. The aircraft would maintain the same top speed up until about 20,000 feet, where every 5,000 foot increment past that, it would increase just slightly. Though we did observe some slightly different behaviors that we thought we would note just to be, again, thorough. First to note, the ceiling altitude of the 2019 model completely stock was roughly 1,500 feet lower than in the 2016 variant. And this also leads us to another slight behavioral difference we noticed, where the aircraft would actually achieve its peak performance at its ceiling altitude, unlike in the 2016 model, where it would have to be about 1,500 to 2,500 feet below its ceiling altitude to achieve peak performance. So, to keep things concise, I won't do what I did with the previous two and rattle off every speed and altitude individually. That's unimportant. What is important is that we discovered that the ceiling altitude on this aircraft was, again, roughly 1,500 feet lower than with her predecessor, and its top speed was about 214 knots faster than what was reported by Estovakian engineers, giving us a top speed of 1,669 knots. After these series of test flights, we landed and returned the aircraft to the hangar, where we then upgraded it fully, at least for speed purposes, to see what a fully upgraded CFA-44 would do and how that would behave differently. So again, we repeated the same old process for the final time. This time we observed that we had a slightly increased ceiling altitude of 38.5 thousand feet, about 1,000 feet higher than last time, and we had an increased top speed of roughly 1,926 knots. That's 257 knots faster than its stock top speed of 1,669 knots, and it's also 471 knots faster than the top speed recorded by Estovakian scientists on the 2016 model. But returning now from my own observations to what's written down in the lore. As for armaments, the CFA-44 can be armed with two Gryachev Shipnov GSH 30-1 30mm single-barrel autocannons on either side of the cockpit, capable of firing 1,500 rounds per minute. As for heavier weaponry, the Nosferatu can be armed with R-73 Archer air-to-air missiles, or it can take advantage of the vast stocks of AIM-9 Sidewinders that were left behind by retreating Amerian forces during the Estovakian-Amerian War. For defensive purposes, the craft could also be equipped with two electromagnetic countermeasure pods. But, going back to offensive armament, it could also be equipped with two electromagnetic launchers or quail guns, aka railguns, which would later become a standard for the aircraft's loadout in future conflicts. But I've yet to mention the CFA-44's most famous weapon system of all. Developed alongside the CFA-44 specifically for its usage, was the infamous Inferno all-direction multi-purpose missile system, and it was used to great effectiveness during both the Estovakian Civil War and Ameria-Estovakia War, respectively. All these weapon systems that I've mentioned, excluding the standard missiles, meaning the AIM-9 Sidewinders and R-73 Archer air-to-air missiles, are deployed through retractable mounts on the top and bottom of the aircraft that can be stowed when not in use to increase the aircraft's stealth capabilities and decrease drag. The CFA-44 can also be equipped with a small complement of UAV-45 Malbolge collaborative combat aircraft or loyal wingman drones that are deployed from internal weapons bays, with the option of mounting 6 drones to hardpoints under each wing for a total of 12 additional drones. Though the UAV-45 is only armed with a singular machine gun, it boasts extreme maneuverability and when operating in large swarms is quite effective at overwhelming enemy forces. The drones can also mimic the radar return of the CFA-44 mothership to confuse enemy forces as well. The Malbolge is controlled by a central control or master unit on board the Nosferatu and is fed information from a sensor array near the center of the aircraft that's very similar to that of the array that's used on the ADF-01 Falcon. This has led many to believe that Belkan scientists were involved in the Malbolge's design. After all, we do know that Belkan engineers that were part of Belka's XBO Resvelger Heavy Command Cruiser program were in fact involved with the P-1112 Agayon Heavy Command Cruiser's design. Furthermore, since the Agayon and the Nosferatu were both conceived as part of the Aerial Fleet Initiative, and the Malbolge was conceived as part of the Nosferatu, it is highly likely that engineers once employed by South Belka's munition factory, the firm behind the ADF-01 Falcon program, found their way to the Nosferatu program. And, of course, subsequently, the UAV-45 Malbolge program. Oddly enough, this master unit is extremely fragile for a piece of combat hardware on a high G capable fighter jet. And if it is destroyed or otherwise fails, all connected UAV-45s will instantly self-destruct to prevent enemy forces from capturing them. Actually, not all that unwise. The only known deployment of the UAV-45 was on March 31st, 2016 during the liberation of Grace Maria, where they were led by a specifically modified CFA-44 piloted by Ila Pasternak. In total, 116 UAV-45s were deployed during the battle, indicating that the Nosferatu mothership wasn't the Malbolge's sole means of deployment. So the origin of these drones, alongside the methods of possible recovery for reuse, remain unknown to this day. Now, the method that the Erusians used during the Lighthouse War to deploy their drones, by using shipping containers, could give us a hint to where these additional drones may have come from. After all, they are small enough to fit under the wings of a CFA-44, so they could very easily fit into shipping containers, and probably multiple at that. And on top of that, there were a suspicious number of shipping containers from defense contractors seen in the Bay of Grace Maria during the liberation of Grace Maria. Defense contractors such as Grunder, Newcom, and General Resource Limited. So perhaps the additional Malbolge drones came from Grunder shipping containers seen on the docks and aboard cargo vessels located in the Bay of Grace Maria during the battle. Just a theory though. Well, finally we've reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed learning about this nexus of Ace Combat lore as much as I did. When I first decided to make this video, I had no idea there was so much lore behind this freaking plane. Though I've been making these videos long enough, you'd think I would have picked up on that by now. And keep in mind, I specifically only covered its lore from the mainline Strangereal timeline. I didn't even attempt to cover, or even get close to touching, the one-off titles like QuickTime Horizon or Infinite Microtransactions. Now, to be fair, Ace Combat Infinity is probably one of my favorite entries in the franchise. The final mission of the campaign was freaking amazing, and the multiplayer, hands down, has been the best Ace Combat multiplayer to date, in my opinion. But it had some of the worst microtransactions I've ever heard of. And I'm surprised no one's talked about this with how insanely predatory this game was. Not only did it have multiple types of loot boxes, but they also made you pay per match. You actually had to pay to play every multiplayer match, the same way you would have to insert a quarter at an arcade. I'm not exaggerating. You would get these things called fuel something, I think it was just fuel, but they acted essentially like tokens. And I forget exactly how much they cost, but at the beginning of the game's lifespan, you got like 3 of them for free. Towards the end of the game's lifespan, you got 6 of them free. After a certain amount of time, they would like refresh. But if you wanted to play more than the 3 to 6 games, you could get packs of these fuel. And they essentially acted like tokens. You could get like packs of like 5, 10, or whatever. And I forget exactly how much they cost. But you put in a few bucks, and yay, you can play a few more rounds. So you literally had to pay to play every multiplayer match. Like, every multiplayer match cost some percentage of what you spent on those fuel packs, or whatever they were called. So, every match cost like 1 fuel unit or whatever. Okay, easy enough, right? Oh no, it gets better. Oh, the bow on top that makes it absolutely perfect? You could actually spend the price of 3 multiplayer matches on 1. So 1 multiplayer match for the price of 3 could get you a chance at slightly better loot at the end of the round. That's it. Oh my god. You could spend, let me reiterate that, you could spend the price of 3 missions on 1 for maybe better stuff at the end. Oh my god. And yes, I am on the level of hypocrite of people that were telling you that the Switch 2 was a waste of money while playing Mario Kart World. Yes, I am that level of hypocrite. Because I will admit, I did spend a lot of money on those fuel token thingies. I even played enough, admittedly, to get near the top of one of the leaderboards for one of those event week contest things that they would do to give you limited edition skins and emblems and stuff like that. I think it was one of the War Dog ones. I forget which War Dog teammate I got, but I got one of their skins for their planes and one of the War Dog emblems, I believe. I believe that was the contest. So yes, I'm enough of a hypocrite to have spent enough money on the game to get near the top of the leaderboards at one point. So you can judge me on that, for sure, that's fair. But that doesn't make the game any less predatory. Just because I fell into its jaws does not make it less of a predator. But anyway, like I said before my rant, I strictly stuck to the Strangereal timeline. If you want more on the other timelines, I guess I could get to videos on those. I already have the footage from Assault Horizon for this video, of course. But I have no idea how I would get footage for Ace Combat Infinity because the servers were shut down years ago and it was an online-only game, so that's great. I mean, again, as much as I complain about it, I would still like to play that game. That game was fun. Too bad, though. Lack of game preservation, of course. Welcome to the 21st century. But in the meantime, if you do want to learn more about the lore of those two timelines, the Infinity timeline and the Assault Horizon timeline, Solstice Eversoul and Ace Combat Fan have great videos on the subjects, and I'll link their channels down below. And until next time, don't forget to like, comment, and fire an ADMM at the subscribe button and bell icon for more lore on the lesser discussed vehicles in fiction.
Imagination will take us to worlds that never were, and with that imagination we use this All Hallows Eve to travel to those worlds if